Excited to be here with Pallavi Sebastian, who I've known for more than a decade as a good friend.
Yeah.
And I've watched your career first at Microsoft and now at Salesforce, playing so many big leadership roles. So I was thrilled when you agreed to sit down and chat with me about things from entrepreneurship to technology, to women in leadership. So thanks for taking on this invitation.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm very honored and humbled that you invited me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, so it's great. So just to kick things off, I think it's helpful, like I know your career path and I know some of the rooms that you've been in from the various conversations we've shared. Maybe you could tell us about your career path.
Sure. So let me maybe back up a bit. I graduated from Rutgers University with a degree in computer science, and I've been in tech since then. So it's been like over 25 years. I was very fortunate and blessed that coming out of college, I got a job opportunity at Microsoft. So I started in Microsoft consulting services, but that quickly moved into sort of technical sales, pre-sales, sales. And I feel like I grew up in sales at Microsoft. So I did every field sales role there was. And then I even sort of switched from, at the time, software to cloud to then hardware. And that was, a great sort of 20-year journey. But I was looking for sort of the next big opportunity and the next big challenge.
Wait, and so 20 years at Microsoft,
20 years at Microsoft.
I mean, that, like in that time period, I mean, you must have, the world changed in terms of technology,
so
right?
Much, yeah. It felt, and also like leaving wasn't necessarily a thing I had thought about. Like, oh yeah, after 20,
You were going to be a Microsoft lifer.
I was going to be a softie for life,
Is that what they call them?
The softie for life, yeah. And it was like breaking up a marriage, because you knew so much. And I say this a lot. I think one of the things that I really thought a lot about is brand equity that you build when you've been at a company, because any room you would walk into, you knew people and they knew you. So it was a big thing to take on, but the opportunity at Salesforce was incredible and I couldn't say no. So I switched to Salesforce. I've been there now 4.5 years. And I started an enablement strategy, and then currently I lead our go-to-market strategy across distribution. And it's been fantastic.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask some elementary questions here, because I know, like when I think of Salesforce, first of all, what is Salesforce key offering?
Yeah. And
then second of all, what does enablement mean? What does go-to-market mean?
So Salesforce is we're an enterprise software company. We build software to help our customers manage their customers. So whether it's from customer relationship management to marketing to commerce to field service, all of those sort of functions that a company needs to think about, we provide the technology, innovation, and software to do that. Especially now in this AI and sort of era, that customer data and how you utilize that to create more automation is super critical. So that's what Salesforce is about. Enablement is really, sort of a fancy way to say learning and development.
Oh, wow. Okay.
In the enterprise space, right? So essentially, how do we enable our employees to be productive? That's really what enablement is. And there's you could say that, yes, you should have training, right? Because once you get out of school, like what are people training on, right? They should be training on so many things, but nobody really focuses on it per se, right? That's where an enablement function is in a company really critical to help, employees grow, whether it's in their career, grow in the function that they're in.
So this is like a shift from human capital to enablement, like in terms of terminology, human resources?
So human resources still exist, and some companies will have an enablement or learning and development L&D function within HR.
This is the L&D side.
But Salesforce, Mark actually really believes enablement is so critical to success that he created a separate function that was separate from HR, right? And that's how critical it is. Go-to-market is really about when you think about how do we sell to our customers, right? Or how do we show up in front of our customers, and that's across multiple different functions. Sales, success, services, marketing, alliances and channel partners, right? So all of those we sort of bucket as distribution functions. And go-to-market is about how do we create the right strategies across those functions to show up in front of our customers to help drive success.
Got it.
So that's what I focus on.
Yeah, I mean, we use go-to-market all the time in the entrepreneurship space. And so it's interesting to hear big, large enterprises, structure their business in the same way.
Yes. And it can go from again, the human side of it, right? What are the people and roles to pricing structures, and how do you package the product? How do you market the product, right? So it could really be a pretty wide spectrum of things.
Cool. Wow, I actually literally learned that. I didn't know what enablement was.
No, it's a fancy word.
I think I was too embarrassed to ask people, wait, what is enablement?
I know, it's a fancy term, but there's an enablement society. It's quite an industry term now.
Okay.
Yeah, revenue enablement is another way.
So I heard you bring up Mark. So who's Mark, and how far away for you from reporting to Mark?
So Mark Benioff is our founder and CEO of Salesforce. Started the company 26 years ago. He has a leadership team, which, like any other company, would have a C-suite, so CFO, COO, CRO, and so on. We recently had a leadership change because we had our COO retired and our CFO has moved on to the nonprofit sector. So we have just brought on a new role, which is Chief Operating and Financial Officer, COFO. That's Robin Washington. And my boss reports to Robin. So I'm, I guess, 2 levels, third level down.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, and this is this is one of the big tech juggernauts, and you're working at the senior leadership level with these folks. So getting your perspective on enablement, go-to-market, and entrepreneurial endeavors within these organizations is helpful. And so maybe this is a good time to shift gears here. Most of the folks that I talk to are creating new venture entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to talk with you because in our conversations, it was clear that there was something very entrepreneurial in the work that you did both at Microsoft and now at Salesforce.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, first of all, how do you think about entrepreneurship, and how do you see that in your workplace?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And I think too often people think that entrepreneurship doesn't exist in a mature enterprise company. But I actually think it does, and it's essential to the company's success, right? So it's not called entrepreneurship, but in my opinion, I think it's all about innovation and transformation. And that, if you break it down, the things that you need to have that is very entrepreneurial-like, right? So innovation, whether it's building new product, it's innovating on the existing set of products to make sure that they are meeting the demand of the market or being competitive, to areas of transformation, right? There's constant need as the market is changing and the technology platform is changing, or the technology landscape rather, especially right now with Gen AI. We need to be thinking far ahead on how are we transforming the way we build product to the way we think about human capital and human resources and the workforce, to think about processes, right, across the company. Think about whether it's in, sales, or it could be, G&A functions like legal or, deal approvals. Like all of these things are now going to be impacted by Gen AI, right?
But when big companies use innovation and transformation, I feel like it can be kind of just language that people use.
I know.
But so what does that really look like? I mean, what does transformation mean for you at Salesforce?
Yeah. So for us, when we think about transformation, it is a broad term, no doubt, right? But the way I sort of break it down is there is things we need to do, which are business as usual, right? We have a commitment to our customers. We have to deliver on that. That is what we're doing to, perform and run the business. There's a separate set of strategies, work, whatever you call it, that is to continue to evolve our company so we can stay relevant profitable, and be driving success for our customers. That to me is what transformation sort of, that's what transformation means, is how are we doing that? How are we evolving ourselves to be relevant, to stay ahead of the curve?
Yeah. It's funny how you say it that way, because in a role that I had before, I used to call it run the shop.
Yeah.
And I would define activities as either run the shop, and the other side of activities is change the shop.
Exactly.
And it
Yes.
sounds like that's what you're saying
is.
here.
It is. It's, I use this a lot. It's perform and transform. You need both in a company, right? And in a startup, it's very much, kind of meshed together, right? Because you are building something new, and yes, you need it to get it to perform, but there's so much change that's happening until you get it to perform, right? But as the company matures, doesn't mean the transformation part should go away, right? Like, it actually is more critical to get to that next spike of growth and innovation that the company needs.
And is that so? Do you think that's unique to technology companies? Because when you think about businesses and like incumbent businesses, I think a lot of people don't think of them as being very transformational.
Yeah, I don't think it's unique to tech. I think there are, but it is probably more common in tech than, or maybe more sort of, aggressive or prominent and in tech than some of the other industries. But I talk to a lot of our customers, whether it's in insurance or healthcare, right? Everybody needs to be, especially again now, right, with Gen A, everybody needs to be thinking about that transformation. The pace at which they're moving may vary because of the industry, right? Because there's a lot of legacy or regulation and so on. But I think tech kind of is unique in that they almost define the pace because of the space that they're in.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah. So I love how we teased out what transformation means, right? So it's work on the shop, or what were your words?
Perform and transform.
Perform and transform. And so, I mean, to me, it makes sense why you need enablement then, right? Is the enablement about the transform?
Yes. It is about
the human transformation, at least?
So enablement is one piece of it. There's so many things in transform, right, that I spend a lot of time on, right? So starting with one, identifying what do we need to transform, right? What's going to, which area of the business we need to take on. Sometimes it can be sort of a net new, in like Agentforce, frankly, one of our products, right, is a new product just launched in September. How do we get our sellers up to speed in selling that? So
and is Agentforce a Gen AI agent? Gen AI agent?
Yes, that is our Gen AI platform. So how do we enable and get our sellers ready to go talk to customers about it? So yes, enablement would play a role in that. But also, Agentforce, for example, is a product we are traditionally a license-based, seat-based platform, right?
Yeah.
So
it's like service as a SaaS product.
Exactly. So, but with Gen AI, it's a lot of consumption-based, right? So consumption-based pricing models. So
how much compute you're using.
Exactly. Or how many conversations are you having with the agent, right?
Yeah.
So when you introduce a new pricing model, there's a lot that needs to change in the company, right? How you price it, how you structure it, how you do revenue recognition, how do you pay people on it? It's very different than, so that's kind of also all the other things that are part of that transformation.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. All right, so then how do we break up what innovation is?
Yes. I think innovation obviously, can come in a lot of different flavors. I think the most common is product innovation, right? Are you building something new? And I think the way I think about innovation is one, you can build something new because there's a market opportunity that you recognize that nobody is playing in. And you think that's where the puck is going and you build something new to get after that. I think the other type of innovation is disruptive, right? We've been doing something a certain way, or the market's been doing something a certain way, but we think, either it's not being as successful or not growing as fast, and we need to disrupt to be able to figure out how to be more successful in that space. So I think it sort of comes in two flavors.
Yeah.
In a large bunch.
Well, but I mean, so when I think about Salesforce, and at this point, Salesforce is more of an incumbent.
Yeah.
Gen AI is on the scene. I imagine the conversations are, oh my God, just like Gen AI might be able to take Google search lunch, is Gen AI and the future of agents being offered by Microsoft or OpenAI going to take Salesforce's lunch in terms of, not requiring you to have that same software as a service with you guys?
Yeah.
And that forces the disruption conversation for you.
Exactly.
But how do you make that change?
So, we're going through it right now as we speak, right? I think, when we think about what is the center point for Gen AI, right? It's data. And today, like you go to ChatGPT, the LLMs are a lot of data that's sort of in, across many different sources, right?
It's not specific.
It's not specific. So that's why the responses you're going to get is whatever's on the internet, right? But when you're getting specific in the enterprise space and you're trying to automate a lot of the tasks and processes, then we need to have the right context of data. And that's where Salesforce plays such a critical role because we own the customer data for our customers, right?
Yeah.
So think about any company in any industry, right? Whether it's like an AT&T or whether it's like, Nebraska Furniture Company. If they are on the Salesforce platform, we want to be able to bring that data and give it the context that the LLM needs to be able to produce better results when you're running the Gen AI capabilities, right? The other thing we provide is we also know not everybody's going to be on the Salesforce platform. So yes, people will have other systems. So we have some great capability and innovation in our data cloud platform that enables us to bring in all the different data sources without, it's called zero copy if you want to get technically, geeky about it. But it's essentially, we connect into these different data sources.
Like more feeds to learn on.
Exactly. So more context coming in to the LLM so we can produce the better results and so on.
Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I imagine one thing I talk about in the classroom with students is leveraging your bird in hand. And like for Salesforce, I imagine that biggest asset that you have is the connections you have, existing trust that you've built with all these customers.
Yes, exactly.
So if they're about to launch some new technology initiative, there's much more comfort in going with Salesforce.
Yes.
As a starting point. You've already held on to their data.
Yes, and that's why, many customers, have been our customers for, 20 plus years, right? And there's a level of trust in the platform, there's a level of trust with the company. We've had some really good successes, early successes already, and lots more coming.
Cool. You've driven success in both emerging and mature markets. And I'm curious, what's harder in building something? Is it building something totally new or transforming something, changing something that's old?
That's a good question. I think it's harder to change something that's mature because I think for the fundamental reason, like humans tend to resist change, right? And I think that, especially, and I actually think that's why one of the things that I loved about Microsoft when I spent some time there was how Satya, coming in as the CEO, changed the culture of the company, which was such a mature company already, right? And I think that is the harder thing to do because and at the time, this was probably 6-7 years ago, right? So the company was 20,000 people. So to change a company that's large, and that was not just the culture part, right? It was also product and product strategy and the categories that Microsoft was going to be in, all of that. I think that's a harder thing to do.
Yeah. So building on that, when you're changing, you're trying to create innovation.
Yeah.
Do new things within an organization that already has been doing something the same way. How have you navigated that personally?
Yeah. So, the funny thing is...
What's most important?
What's most important? So, what's most important as a leader, I would imagine.
Yeah, what's most important to you as a leader in trying to do something new?
Yeah. So, for me, actually, personally, I like like starting on the ground floor or something. I like building things, right? I'm not into the optimizing, because I actually, frankly, in my career, I've had opportunities to go run a business, but that was more about optimizing that business. And I chose not to because I like getting on the ground floor or something and building it, right? I like ambiguity because I think it creates opportunity for creativity. To me as a leader, what's important when you're leading a team through that and through the, and I think this does apply even in that change and transformation side, is one, acknowledging the potential you have on the team and playing to that, right? So what are people capable of, right? Because what they're doing with this level that they're operating at today may be wonderful, but they haven't been pushed or stretched to get into new areas that they have themselves not, their potential, like tap into their potential, right? So I think one is identifying what is the talent on the team and their potential. And then two is when you tee them up for these opportunities where they are going to be stretched, is having the right safety net for them, right? Having their back, having making them feel comfortable that when they're stretching themselves, that they will be, somebody that can, has their back and will make sure that they are set up for success.
Do you think being entrepreneurial with an organization requires you to be more focused on people
1,000%.
than the actual change that you're implementing?
1,000%. Yes. It is all about the people. And I think that's where I skipped that part and sort of just jumped into answering about the people. But yes, when you're thinking about transformation in a large organization, your biggest asset is the people. And they are also, like I said earlier, resistance to change comes from people, right? So if we can focus on how we bring our employees along on the journey and help them see the opportunity for themselves, the change and the transformation will go faster and will land better. So we do spend a lot of time on people and talent and how to bring them along.
Yeah, oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And what's the hardest thing about getting that asset, which is other people, on board?
I think it's getting agreement and alignment, right, on what's important. And again, you could see the examples of companies like Microsoft and currently Salesforce. We're going through this too. But I'll refer to the Microsoft example because I think we've seen it on the other side now, like they've kind of gone through that massive shift. And the hardest thing was to bring people along, right? One individual at the top can have the vision and can inspire the people, but how do you trickle that down to the 120,001 employee, right? I think that is the hardest part of driving that level of change and transformation in the company.
So how have you done that in your divisions? Because I imagine you have quite a few direct reports, both at Microsoft and here at Salesforce.
I think there's a few things. I think one is aligning on the vision, right? So for me, the function that we're very close to understanding what are the company priorities, the CEO priorities. So first and foremost, we sort of, snap into that, right? Understanding what is the company priority and the vision. I think two is understanding how that company priority and vision maps to our function and what is our role in that, right? How do what role can we play in driving that transformation? We can be a recipient of it, or we can be on our front foot and leading that transformation. And for me, I love to lead from the front, right? So to me, that's more important. And also my function requires us to, right? So we spend a lot of time sort of unpacking and understanding what role are we going to play in driving that transformation. Three, we focus a lot on getting our stakeholders aligned, right? So one, identifying who the stakeholders are. We sit in a function which is kind of looks after a lot of projects that are across the company, right? And transformation a lot of times is cross-company. So we spend time identifying those right functions and then going to those leaders and understanding are they aligned to the priorities that we're talking about, right? And how are they thinking about the transformation within their function? So once we get that alignment, and then three is sort of thinking about how do we actually execute and implement the transformation. And that I think is probably the biggest lift, right? The change management, the sort of, hypercare type efforts to make sure that that trickles down across the company and is operationalized in an effective way.
Being at a major organization, leading organization like Salesforce or Microsoft, one of the challenges I imagine to being entrepreneurial is that there's so much more at stake. Mm-hmm. When you're a new venture, you have nothing to lose. At Salesforce, you're implementing Gen AI, everybody's watching you. Or at Microsoft, when you're implementing anything new, everybody's watching you and kind of waiting to call you out when you fail.
Yeah.
How does that impact your ability to innovate?
That's a great question. And I don't know if I have sort of the silver bullet on it. I think it is definitely the thing that drives a lot of my anxiety every day. And a lot of us, right, keeps us up at night because, and this is so real right now in the industry, right? Like everybody's trying to figure out how to figure out this Gen AI thing, right? And it's a lot of trial and error, and it has to be. So I think what works for us is being transparent. I think it is, Salesforce is a very values-driven company, and trust is our number one value. So with trust comes transparency, right? So for us, yes, this is new capability, new innovation, but we are transparent with our customers about that, right? And we bring customers in early to innovate with us, right? And yes, there's a lot of trust that goes in that, but it's critical to making sure that, one, we are innovating in a way that is, again, relevant and resonates with our customers, but also they can provide us feedback on the areas we may not have thought about, right? So I think trust and transparency is critical to that.
That's interesting. So it sounds to me like you're saying you bring in your customers to co-create with you.
Yes.
And that opens up a bunch of risk that now your customers are looking at, be like, wait, you don't know the answer? Or, ask for things that go beyond what you're able to deliver. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, I think it depends on like which area we're talking about. Gen AI is new for everyone, right? And customers understand that nobody has all the answers yet, right? But at the same time, the customers see value in co-creating, right? So it's not, this is literally some of the things we're talking about every day right now is with Agentforce, right? We have a set of customers we've identified who have started to test Agentforce, and they see value, but they want to scale it out. But scaling out a Gen AI capability has a massive change and impact on how they think about their workforce, right? The digital labor. And before they jump into that, they actually want us to partner with them, right? So it's more of it's co-create, it's a trusted partnership, it's an opportunity for us to work together to figure out what's the right value that customer is trying to get out of it and how do we support them in that. At the same time, it doesn't mean that the product is not, there is a platform and a product and it's working, right? But how do we sort of scale it is where the partnership becomes really critical with our customers.
So, but there's a myth out there, particularly on the new venture side,
yeah,
that you got to invent these ideas on your own,
yeah,
right? And you have this big reveal. Look, we've designed it. You know, we went off in our innovation studio and come back with the solution.
Yeah. So that we've done, right? So
Okay.
we did that at our Dreamforce event in September where we launched Agentforce. And we had a couple of customers that actually were our launch customers, right? So, and since then, you know, the innovation hasn't stopped though, right? There's still a lot of iteration we need to do in building this digital labor platform, right? So that's where the partnership comes with our customers to bring them along in the journey.
Yeah. So if you're, just to shift gears here now, thinking about like people that want to enter the technology industry, that's constantly changing and, you know, wants to navigate these things that you're talking about, what's some of the advice that you would give to, let's say, an MBA that's joining Microsoft or Salesforce or Google?
Yeah. I think...
What are the skills that are most required?
Yeah. I think the skill that's most required, and I feel like it was the same skill 25 years ago when I was starting out in the workforce, is understanding tech. And, I was a computer science major, and while the work that I do now, 25 years later, is not, like I'm not coding, right? But I started as a, development consultant and coding, and and all of that. But there's a level of understanding technology that I think every single individual entering the workforce needs to have, right? How do these things work, right? How does AI work? What does it mean that we have ChatGPT? Why is that relevant? Like, it's a great capability and I love using it, but the more and more people want to think about how to be successful in the workforce, especially early in the career, that tech connection is very, very, very important.
So study tech.
Study tech. So how you actually do that, in my opinion, is I think one, there's a lot of actually learning out there on, obviously through academics, right? Like, and I'm sure there's plenty of programs and things, but even in the workforce, like if, people that join Salesforce, we have a huge platform, Trailhead, which is all about helping our employees, our customers, people in the industry learn up on how AI works, right?
Got it. Okay.
So seek out those types of things to get more informed and educated on it.
But so when we say tech, if you were to design your own course, and let's call it leadership in tech, what would be one concept that would be mandatory?
So the one concept that I think is mandatory in this day and age is adaptive mindset. How to have an adaptive mindset in the current workforce, right? I think to be a leader in tech, you have to constantly be adapting to the environment that's changing around us. And especially when you're leading people, people come from obviously different walks of life and different skill sets and different aspirations, right? To be able to adapt to your team's needs or your direct reports' needs and be able to coach them, I think is also part of that adaptive mindset.
Cool. Sounds like that entrepreneurial mindset goes hand in hand.
Yes.
Your team right now, if they were to use one word to describe you, your leadership style, what would they say?
Oh, that's a good one. I never thought about that. One word to describe my leadership style. I think empathetic.
Yeah, can you tell us more about it?
I spend a lot of time, so empathy is one of my personal values. And I think in the enterprise space, in the workforce, it's not demonstrated enough. And I spend a lot of time understanding what motivates, drives, annoys my team as individuals, right? And I think it's important for me as a leader to understand that so I can coach them better to do their best work of their career in the job that they're sitting in on my team.
So let's say you had a colleague that pushed back on that and said, no, it's all about the results. And empathy, it comes second.
And there are people who do that. I think results is not more or less important. It's table stakes. You have to produce in the job that you're in. I think empathetic leadership helps you to get your team to produce the best results they possibly can, right? So I think they're definitely related, but I don't think it's a trade-off. I think results is, performance is critical to every single individual and the role they play in the company.
Okay. What's your go-to leadership metaphor? Is it coach, architect, conductor, gardener, something else?
Coach, definitely coach. Maybe gardener.
Oh, why gardener?
One, I love gardening, as you know.
Oh, that's right.
And I think, people need tender love and care, right? And it shouldn't be, I get it, people come into work, but at the same time, that's where they're spending most of their day. And if you don't relate to them and provide, care, then they are not going to do their best work, right? So I think there's a level of nurture that leaders should have.
It's interesting. And the gardening metaphor, I feel like time becomes a bigger component of that, right? Having the patience to wait for the vegetables to show up.
Yes.
How does that play out in the workplace for you?
That's a good one. Yeah, I think there's less and less patience and tolerance, right? It actually goes back to what we were saying earlier about results, right? I think for people, so when you're pushing people to their potential, you have to have patience with that, right? Because you want them to grow, but that growth may take time, right? And you have to constantly assess if you're investing in the right things to help them grow, right? So some people, I have people on my team who I can tell them they're very coachable, right? And they're seeking, they're kind of looking for that coaching, and I can tell them, hey, I noticed you did this in this meeting in this way. Next time, try this. And the next meeting, they're on it, right? And they're trying it, and you could see they're struggling, but they know they want to get over this, hump, and they want to push themselves. But there's some people that need the training, right? They actually need to sit down and understand it and dissect it, and do a lot of maybe role play, right? So in that scenario, then it's important to spend that time with them to see how they're gonna, to allow them to grow and be patient for them to grow, right? So I think you need both, but you can't forget the results part, right? They still need to be performing in what's expected, but they're also performing and growing, right? So that's where I think patience comes, but you also have to, you can't just wait on time, right? For a vegetable, yes, but you can sometimes add, some plant food, right? And fertilizer and some more sunshine. So that's what it is, right? It's kind of nurturing it to make sure it goes at the pace you want.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. All right. Here's a little fun one. So what's harder, aligning your teams or getting your kids out the door on time?
Aligning teams, actually. Yeah. My kids are older now, so they can get out the door on time. I feel like, though, aligning teams in a large company is definitely
But they're
harder.
always looking for their water bottle or something.
I know, right?
I don't know. I'm like, they're like sitting around and they're like, I'm ready. Like, did you remember this?
Yeah.
Okay. What's a tech buzzword you secretly like and one you wish would disappear forever?
Ooh. I think my new favorite tech word, or it's not a tech word, but the new favorite word I do think is adaptive mindset.
Oh.
Yeah.
And is it different than entrepreneurial mindset?
I think it is. I think, and actually, I spend so much time at Microsoft. Satya kind of brought this growth mindset, right, in the work that Carol Dweck has done. And so there was a lot of time we were sort of saying the growth mindset and beginner's mindset. But I think adaptive it's similar, but it's slightly different because you are, in a beginner's mindset, you can create new, right? Or you're bringing it the mindset to create new. In adaptive, there is a lot happening, and you need to be able to be successful and effective in all the change that's happening. And I think that's why it's different.
So you're maybe not you're not the driver of the change.
Yes.
And the change may be around you.
Yes,
You have to react and respond to it.
Yes.
Is there a skill to reacting and responding that's different than?
Is there a skill that's different? I think so, right? I think the skill is a lot of it is in the change management, right? Like what we sometimes when we're trying to write change management, and what's in it for me, right? So I think it's a lot of thinking about in this change, what's in it for me versus, maybe in a beginner's mindset, you're focused a lot on, how do I get this out there and what's in it for the people that I'm trying to get this out there to, right? The product or.
Yeah, no, that's right. It's connecting it to yourself.
Yeah. Okay. Think about the workforce right now, right? We all need to be thinking differently about our job. And if AI and agents are going to play such a big role, you're not going to have a workforce that's just humans. It's going to be humans and agent. And that's why I think adaptive mindset is critical, because as a human, we need to think about how will we change and perform in this new landscape, right? So that's why I think it's a little different than the beginner's mindset conversation we were having.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And generative AI is like coming at us from every angle. I mean, the number of use cases that I have for it is astonishing. Okay, so I want to ask you, one of the things that I explore, in my classes on entrepreneurship is, you have to go and take action, and that can be challenging. And there's a lot of things that kind of sometimes hold us back. And one of those things I think is about permission. And I'm curious, like, how do you think about permission in your career, and what role does it play in helping? What roles have you ever felt that you had to either ask for permission or just take action without looking for it?
That's a good one. Somebody very early on in my career said to me, ask for forgiveness rather than permission. And that has always stuck. And I look back actually very early on. I think I was at Microsoft like maybe 3 years in, and there was the job that I was in. I was a solutions engineer, right? So you go into accounts, customers, and you're part of sales, but you go in and you help. You're sort of pitching the technology. You're sort of technical pre-sales, right? And one of the things we learned at the time, I remember, was our customers weren't deploying the software that they own. And so if they're not deploying, they're not going to buy or upgrade to new software that was coming out, right? So there was a need to enable our customers to deploy software, right? So I came up with this whole program with partners and, pulled in a couple of people from the technical team to partner with me, marketing and all this stuff, built out this whole program, and we had a lot of success in getting our customers to deploy software. And I remember at the time, nobody had told me like, go solve this problem, right? We knew, like, you do business reviews and you knew there was a problem. And, I felt I was empowered at least in the customers that I was working with, to come up with a way to help solve that and try it out, right? I mean, of course, I told my manager I was doing this and this, and there was support there. But nobody said, hey, go do this, right? It was sort of, I took the opportunity to go do it and try it. Of course, we iterated if we failed, but at the end, we got the outcome we needed, and it was actually rewarded quite well, right? So I think that experience really confirmed for me this, ask for forgiveness rather than permission. And since then, I've kind of been driving my career with that, mentality that take on challenges, see the problem that you think is the most critical that needs to be solved, and take it on and try it out. And if you fail, you learn from it and try it again.
Yeah, well, that's great. And one of the things that I was curious about too is like, one of the hangups that people have, right? So one could be, looking for a boss to tell them to take on a particular action. Another challenge I think people face is the different identities that they navigate. Mm-hmm. And I see that you do a lot of work with women, women in leadership, women in tech. Tell us a little bit about those roles and why that's important to you.
I think it's personal, and I think for most women it is personal, right? I've been the only one or the first woman in a lot of rooms, right? And you look around and it gets lonely. It's like, why aren't there more women? And I know of many talented women, so why aren't there more women? So I've kind of made it my personal kind of ambition is to help, and actually it goes for not just women, but all people that I interact with, to help them realize their full potential. But obviously for women, creating the right opportunities and the seats at the right tables to give them more access and visibility and exposure. So there are things that I do within Salesforce, and I did this at Microsoft too. There's a women's network. I'm the executive sponsor for it, and we, do a number of sort of events and activities to create opportunity to grow and help women connect with each other, connect with others in the company, not just women, but our male allies as well. And then there's a lot I do personally, just coaching and mentorship. It's my way of giving back and paying it forward, right? Because somebody did that for me, and that was it helped propel me in my career, and I want to be able to give that back.
Yeah, that's great. In new venture entrepreneurship, so I teach in a business technology entrepreneurship program. Mm-hmm. And I'm acutely aware of the disproportionate number or lack of women and underrepresented minorities in tech and in new venture entrepreneurship. You've worked at some of the big tech companies. What have you seen have been some of the challenges that some of the mentees that you've had have encountered, or that you yourself have encountered, and what are some of the strategies that you've enabled to kind of support yourself or those folks?
Yeah, I think there's two things. I think one, and this is not just for women, I think most people, but women sort of go through this more, is having intentionality in their career planning. I think, I'm very ambitious and I'm very goal oriented, right? So I knew at a certain point, like I want to be here in the next 5 years in this role. And I would sort of carve out my path on how to get there. I think a lot of people don't, especially women, don't know how to get there, right? They may have an idea of that, yes, sometimes they don't know where they want to get to, right? And that's fine too. Sometimes you want to take experiences and explore. But it's helping, women navigate career, I think is an area that we need to invest more in. I think the second part, which actually is very related to the first one, is women want to raise families, right? And there is just, it just comes with the territory, right? And it doesn't mean that they can't be successful in their career because they want that. I've had 2 kids, and actually both times I went on maternity leave, I got promoted when I got back. One, I actually got promoted like 2 days before my delivery date, right? My due date. So it's possible to be successful and have a family. Do you have to make certain sacrifices? Yes. And that's something that each individual has to choose and realize for themselves, right?
Yeah.
When I had my second and I was on a plane, every, week or every other week, it was getting taxing, right? And I decided, yes, I took on that promotion and I did the job when I came back from maternity leave, but a year into it, it was not sustainable. And I decided to then, take a different role. But I was very clear when I shifted into a different role that it was a lateral move and I wasn't taking a pay cut or because I chose to not run a large team. So I had to make sure intentionally that I negotiate those things to make sure that it didn't take a setback in my career, right?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's important to have that conviction and ask, because I also believe this term, which my husband actually always says, is don't ask, don't get, right? So if you don't ask, you're never going to get it. You're starting with 0 there, right? So you may ask and you may not get it, but at least you asked, right? Or they may come back with a counter offer, right? So I think it's important to ask for what you want in your career. Otherwise, you wonon't get it.
That's funny. My wife says the same thing. Yeah. Don't ask, don't get it. And actually, it's an interesting point. And I always bring this up with students myself. Is you brought up your husband. What role does your partner play in supporting you on all this?
That's a great question. I mean, I wouldn't have the career I have if it wasn't for my partner. I am very clear about that. He has been an incredibly supportive husband, father, all of those things. And I think the level of support has been different throughout my career. I think early on, we were both actually at Microsoft at one point. And it was, dinner conversations would be very heavy about business. But in a way, it was great because he was a sounding board for me and I was a sounding board for him. And we sort of helped each other in our career there. And then later on, actually, he decided to take a step back and be the primary caregiver for a while. So he left Microsoft. And it actually was wonderful because it was the same time that I had gotten into that role. And, it helped us create the balance that we needed at the time. While I was traveling a lot because of work. And now, and sort of 4 years into that, he now is an entrepreneur himself, right? So he has, I travel for work, but he has a lot of flexibility because he makes his own schedule, right? So he can sort of help with the kids and so on. So I think it's a great sort of balance and a dance, but also I think just, emotionally, mentally, intellectually, I feel like I get a lot of support from him, which helps me be successful. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, same on my side.
Yeah.
We both, my wife and I, have the same story, and we've been watching each other as neighbors and encouraging each other in that way. All right, I want to shift gears to another identity you hold, and this is something that I've been curious about as I talk to folks that are working in tech. Mm-hmm. I'm South Asian American, you're South Asian American, and there are a lot of South Asians that are playing leadership roles in some of the biggest technology companies. At the same time, as a South Asian, you're a minority within the United States.
Yeah.
How do you navigate these kind of two perspectives in the roles and the spaces that you've been in?
Yeah, I think it is an interest. Yes, I agree with you. I think there's a lot of South Asians in the tech industry. Probably of all the industries, that's the one industry that there's a larger population of South Asians in tech. I think it does make it a little bit easier because of that. Because if I have friends in other industries, they don't necessarily see as more people that look like them in those industries. I think the way to navigate is being authentic. And I wasn't always authentic and wearing my South Asianness out front and earlier in my career, right? But I think as time went on, and also I think, as you see the environment around you also shifting and becoming more diverse, it makes it easier to be authentic and be accepted, right? But I do think it starts, especially now as a leader, I do feel like I have a responsibility, and it starts with me, is to, be who I am, and all of me, not just this is the work me or the, home life me is different. No, it's all of me at work. And if I do that, it creates space for others to also bring their full self to work. And then you start to create the sense of belonging, right, that you need, and bring that diversity into the workplace that's organic.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so one last question that I like to always end on.
Okay.
And that is, if you were somebody, and I'm gonna give it's a two-parter for you. Okay. So let's do part one.
Okay.
If you're in an organization, let's say a big organization with a reputation on the line.
Yeah.
But you want to create a new initiative there. You think things are old and backward and need to be done differently. What's your advice to that person that wants to be bold and do something new but is nervous?
I think two parts to the advice. I think one, I like to ground myself in data. So if I have a new idea or a new, initiative that I want to bring to light, I go do a lot of discovery and get data points, qualitative and quantitative, to also just for me to be more educated about why am I exploring this, right? And for me to build some conviction and yes, I think there is something here, and have data to prove that. The second thing I would do is pitch it to some of the most influential people on the team that I think are in places of influence that may not be obvious, right? Because yes, of course you can go pitch it to the head of the team, right? Yeah. And say but before I get there, right? Because that is that should be my best pitch, right? So I don't want to start there. So I may go talk to my peers. I may go talk to other people that I know that my leader relies on, right? Or has a, sort of a trusted relationship with, or that person knows the leader really well and how they think, right? So I would sort of create a bit of a, groundswell of support and, test out my theories, have them poke at it, give me feedback so I can build the best pitch and then go pitch it.
I like that. So you said in there, why am I thinking this idea? Mm-hmm. Tell me more about that comment. When you said you wanted to grab data, you said, yes. Why am I thinking this idea?
Yeah. So, this happens a lot at work too, where right now, right? Where there's so many ideas on how we should be thinking about our transformation of our go-to-market model. And I'll get random ideas, but I don't, sometimes I'll just kind of be like, that's never going to happen. We're never going to do that as a company, right? But then I'll come back to it and think about why wouldn't we do that? And then there'll be 10 reasons of well, this person's not going to like it, or this will break this part of the business, and that model will break if we do this, right? And then Mark will definitely not agree to this. There could be 10 different reasons I can list of why that's not going to work. But I have to sort of put all that aside and think about, if I'm not going to bring this to light, it will never happen, for sure. But if I can sort of take that list and, again, bring data and additional things or perspectives from other people to start to hit these things and figure out, and I may not solve all 10, but if I can solve maybe the first 3, and test it out, then I'm making progress, right? So that's kind of how I think about it. I don't try to shove it away completely. I try to go back and see. And you know what? If I can't even get the first 3, then maybe that was not a good idea, right? So that's sort of how I process it.
I love it. Yeah. So I was going to ask you as a second question, what advice would you give somebody wants to be an entrepreneur, a new venture entrepreneur? But now I wonder, is it any different?
I think this is one of the things we talked about at dinner, right? And why I was thinking, or why I was sharing with you, I don't think it's different. I think it's just a different environment that you're in, right? A startup versus a mature company. But if in my world, at least in the mature company, if you're on the transformation side of things, it's a lot of the same skill sets. It's a lot of, innovative thinking, beginner's mindset to getting stakeholders buy-in, building a pitch, grounding yourself in data, right? Doing research, like all of those things are things that my team and I do right now to build the right strategies, right? So I think it's very similar.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's a good place to end.
Awesome.
Thank you for taking the time to do this. This is incredible.
Thank you. This was really fun.
All right. Cool.